The Argument Clinic. Emotions. You are almost certainly aware of the most recent scientific reports, such as from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They say that if global heating reaches 1.5 degrees Celsius beyond pre-industrial levels, as it is currently predicted to do, we will face dramatically more extreme heat waves, more species migrations and extinctions, greater health risks to the poorest and most vulnerable, and worse. Already sea ice is melting and glaciers are retreating more rapidly. How do you respond to these predictions? In line with some recent commentators, note that we said global heating rather than global warming. What effects do the two terms have? Does warming sound more comfortable and heating sound more threatening? Words have consequences. That reminds me. Did I leave the oven on? Ugh. Now, consider these three statements. Adults keep saying, "We owe it to the young people to give them hope." But I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if your house is on fire. Because it is. Greta Thunberg. Climate change refers to significant changes in global temperature, precipitation, wind patterns, and other measures of climate that occur over several decades or more. The seas are rising. The foods we eat and take for granted are under threat. climatechange.ucdavis.edu. We, the people, still believe that our obligations are not just to ourselves, but to all posterity. We will respond to the threat of climate change, knowing that the failure to do so will betray our children and future generations. President Barack Obama. Which do you find most persuasive or compelling? If you chose the first or the third, you may wonder whether you're more influenced by an appeal to your emotions than by a reliance on solely factual statements. If so, then you're not alone. Opinion formers and influencers increasingly try to ensure that how someone feels about an issue is given equal or greater value than what they know or can prove about it. An emotional response tends to draw us towards individuals whose words strike an emotional chord with our own views. This is as true of Nigel Farage and Jeremy Corbyn as it is of Greta Thunberg. Note that these are all polarizing figures, although perhaps you think one or more of them isn't. In which case, what does that tell you? In contrast, thinking critically will require you to engage evidence, to test theories properly, and to base your claims and arguments on what can be shown rather than merely on what other people can be induced to feel. Of course, knowledge and reason alone don't necessarily lead to action. Sometimes we actually might need to stir people up to feel a strong enough sense of urgency or of responsibility. However, stirring people up is legitimate only if it's based on something that is true and reasonable. This doesn't mean that you'll necessarily reach a different conclusion, but you'll have reinforced your view and be better able to persuade others. Climate change is a perfect example of this. So, how can effective thinking help us to live in a way that minimizes the harm we do to the planet? What kind of world do we want to live in? I want a world where beautiful coral reefs exist. I want a world where crystal clear rivers flow into unpolluted oceans. I want a world which feels safe to bring children into. I want a world where people aren't forced to leave their homes because of drought or flooding, or their land is no longer able to grow crops. I want a world where everyone has the same opportunity to flourish. I want a world where the powerful aren't indifferent to the needs of the poorest. Which of these makes the single strongest impression on you? Which makes you most want to act to help resist climate change? Which makes the least strong impression? Why? The science suggests that two of the most important things that we, as citizens of the richer Western countries, can do are to minimize air travel and to cut down on meat, especially beef and lamb, together with dairy products such as cheese, milk, and butter. Does what you've learned about global heating lead you to decide rationally to take any of these steps, given that they might require quite significant changes in your lifestyle? Why not challenge yourself and your friends to engage with some of the university's environmental initiatives? I'm suddenly thinking that my plan to fly to France and eat a lot of cheese isn't such a great one. Something to think about. Renewable technologies are developing rapidly, and many consider nuclear power as zero carbon. What do you think about nuclear versus renewable tech? Do you consider nuclear as renewable? How important is the language we use when discussing climate change, particularly with those who may not take the same view as us? Does what you can do as an individual matter? How can you make sure it does?